Desert had been calm, the land stretching endless under a blood-orange sun that dipped on the horizon, but the air was heavy, thick with a silence that felt unnatural. Then came the sounds of hooves, relentless, echoing in the void. El Muerto, the headless rider, tearing across the barren lands with a spectral fury. His black horse's eyes glowed a faint red, as if from within, and though he had no head, his presence radiated an unmistakably rage. Once feared in life as a bandit, now El Muerto was feared in death for the vengeance that kept him bound to this earth. His form moved like a shadow, half in this world and half beyond, eternally searching for the rest he would never find. He had once battled the living and the law, but now it was not the living he faced. It was something older, something that death could not conquer. He rode deep into what had once been the heart of an empire, land soaked in the blood of ancient rituals and steeped in the power of gods long forgotten. Unwittingly, his pursuit had led him to the ruins of an Aztec temple, a place where the dead did not sleep. The winds whispered, carrying with them the faint echoes of drums, the scent of blood that had long dried but never disappeared. Here beneath the ruins lay the restless spirits of warriors and priestesses who had once served gods whose names had been lost to time. But something stirred in the ruins that night, something far darker than any restless souls. The earth beneath the temple trembled, and from the depths of the underworld a figure rose. Meklalenti, the god of death, materialized from the shadows, his skeletal form towering above the temple ruins. His hollow eyes blazed with ancient rage, and with a silent command, the ground crackled open, releasing the undead from their eternal slumber. These were no ordinary spirits. These were the Aztec undead, warriors who had served the god of the dead in life and now served him in death. They emerged, bones clattering, their hollow sockets glowing with the fire of forgotten wars, and at their helm Meklalenti raised his skeletal hand, calling forth the wrath of the underworld itself. The clash was immediate and violent. El Muerto swung his blackened sword, a blade dulled by the countless souls it had once reaped in life. The undead warriors advanced, their skeletal limbs clattering but moving with unnatural speed, wielding obsidian blades that gleamed even in the dim light of the underworld's veil. His sword struck one down, but it rose again as though untouched. Another grabbed the reins of his horse, pulling him to the ground, while a priestess with the face of death itself hissed her ancient curse, her voice echoing with the force of 1,000 souls. For the first time in his cursed afterlife, El Muerto felt something akin to fear. The warriors, unlike the lawmen who had once killed him, knew no restraint. The gods of death and the sun had abandoned them to endless war, their existence a cycle of battle that could not be stopped by mere mortal will. His rage and vengeance, though mighty, were no match for the ancient powers they wielded. Yet El Muerto had never known surrender, not even in death. He rose, tearing free from the grasp of the undead, and mounted his horse once more. But as he did, Mechlente descended from the shadows, his skeletal wings spreading wide as he prepared to meet the rider in a battle that would shake the very foundations of the underworld. The battle between El Muerto and Mechlente began with a storm of fury. The god of death swung his obsidian claw with unimaginable force, each striking, splitting the earth beneath them. El Muerto countered with each strike, with his sword blackened by the deaths it had caused in life. But even his blade seemed to falter against the overwhelming power of Mechlente. The two forces clashed with the sound of thunder, their blows sending shockwaves through the ruins. The god of death does not bow to mortals, a voice seemed to echo through the battlefield, though Mechlente's skeletal face remained emotionless. He summoned the winds of the underworld, the souls of the dead swirling around him, rising from the earth in a storm of bones and spirits. El Muerto found himself surrounded on all sides, the undead closing in, their skeletal forms relentless and merciless. Yet in the face of this, El Muerto did not retreat. His sword flashed again and again, carving through the dead as he charged directly towards Mechlente, seeking the heart of the battle. His rage was now not just for survival, but for dominance over death itself, an impossible task, but one that drove him forward. The two forces collided in a terrible storm of violence. Mechlente summoned creatures from the depths of Mictlan, spectral beasts with gaping jaws, their forms twisting and writhing as they tore through the air toward El Muerto. But the headless rider was swift, his horse galloping through the chaos, cutting through the beast with a precision that defied the odds. His blade met Mechlente's obsidian claw once more, sparks flying as they clashed. The god of death let out a roar, the sound splitting the sky as his hand closed around the blade, shattering it to pieces. El Muerto was thrown back by the force, his sword destroyed, and yet still he rose. The god of death, now towering above him, summoned all the powers of the underworld. The ground beneath them trembled as if the earth itself was ready to swallow them whole. Realizing that his battle against the god of death was futile, El Muerto tore away from the ruins. Mounting his horse with a desperate fury, he rode hard, fast, leaving behind the temple, but the undead followed. They pursued with a relentless hunger, their skeletal hands grasping at the shadows, their forms blurring into the earth itself as they merged with the land, rising again and again whenever El Muerto tried to flee. Mechlente's vengeance was endless, and his undead army chased El Muerto wherever he rode, leaving destruction in their wake. Villages once peaceful were ravaged, their people slaughtered as the undead tore through them in pursuit of the rider. Each time El Muerto thought he had escaped, the undead would rise from the earth, driven by the will of their god to hunt him down. In his desperation, El Muerto pushed his horse harder, trying to outrun the ancient curse that clung to him. But no matter where he rode, the undead followed, their skeletal hands reaching for him, their hollow eyes glowing with the fire of vengeance. The pursuit was endless, and for the first time, El Muerto felt the weight of defeat pressing down on him. The final confrontation came as El Muerto reached a great chasm in the earth, a place where the desert ended and the world seemed to drop off into the abyss. Behind him, the undead warriors gathered once again, their skeletal forms glistening in the moonlight as they advanced. And there, on the other side of the chasm, stood Mechalente, his wings spread wide as he called for the rider's surrender. But El Muerto did not stop. Instead, he spurred his horse forward, galloping towards the edge of the cliff, the skeletal warriors close behind. The undead reached out, their hands grasping for the reins of his horse, but with a final leap, the horse and rider plunged into the abyss. The wind howled as they fell, the world spinning around them, the undead screeching as they followed, but it was not the end. Far below, in the depths of the abyss, a different power stirred, something older than Mechalente, something deeper than the underworld's reach. And as El Muerto fell into the darkness, he vanished, leaving only the god of death and his undead army to stare into the endless void, their vengeance unfulfilled. But the pursuit never ended. Even in the depths of the abyss, the Aztec undead followed, for death was a cycle that could never be broken as long as El Muerto existed. So too would the forces of the underworld, chasing him through the realms of the living and the dead, locked in an eternal dance of vengeance, fear, and fury.